This story is titled, Sister Convinced Our Entire Family to Skip My Wedding During Her Divorce by Lying that I was the reason she had a divorce. Years later, she wants me to share my baby with her because she is infertile. Hey Reddit, I don't really post here often, but after reading a bunch of other stories about family drama, I felt like I needed to get this off my chest. For context, I'm 27 female, and I've been married for 3 years now. My relationship with my older sister, let's call her Lisa, 30 female, has always been rocky, but things hit a whole new level of toxic when she decided to sabotage my wedding. To set the scene a bit, Lisa was going through a divorce at the time. Her marriage was falling apart because her husband didn't want kids, and Lisa had always dreamed of being a mom. Now, I'm not here to debate whether or not that's a deal breaker, because, yeah, it totally is. But Lisa knew about his feelings before they got married. He was very clear about wanting a child-free life, but she married him anyway, thinking she could change his mind. So, their marriage was on its last legs right around the time I was planning my wedding. My fiancé, now husband, and I had been together for 4 years, and we were excited to finally tie the knot. We had spent months saving up and planning every detail. We were ready for it. But Lisa decided my wedding was somehow a personal attack on her. At first, it was small comments, like how I was being insensitive for planning a wedding while she was dealing with her divorce. I brushed it off because, honestly, Lisa has always been a bit of a drama queen. Growing up, she was the golden child. She could do no wrong in my parents' eyes, while I was usually the one in trouble for not doing things her way. If she was upset, everything stopped until she felt better. So, her being upset about my wedding wasn't surprising, but I figured she'd get over it. Then my parents got involved. They called me up and asked me to postpone the wedding. Let me say that again. They wanted me to postpone my wedding because Lisa was getting divorced. I thought they were joking at first. When I realized they were serious, I told them that wasn't happening. My fiancé and I had already put down deposits and sent out invitations. Plus, why should my wedding have to take a back seat to Lisa's problems? Her divorce wasn't my fault, and I wasn't going to put my life on hold for her. Well, my parents didn't take that well. They told me I was being selfish and that family should come first. I argued that Lisa's divorce had nothing to do with my wedding, and that she could either be happy for me or not come. That's when they dropped the bombshell. If I didn't postpone the wedding, they wouldn't attend. They were willing to skip their own daughter's wedding to protect Lisa's feelings. I was heartbroken. I'd always known they favored Lisa, but this felt like a betrayal on another level. I told them they were free to make their own decisions, but that I wasn't changing my plans. I figured that would be the end of it. If they didn't want to come, fine. At least I'd have my fiancé, my friends, and his family to support me. But Lisa wasn't done yet. She started spreading lies to the rest of the family. At first, she told everyone I was being cruel by getting married while she was going through a tough time. Some people felt bad for her, but didn't think that was enough of a reason to skip my wedding. So, Lisa escalated. She started telling people I was the reason her marriage ended. According to her, I had convinced her husband to leave her because I was jealous of her and couldn't stand the idea of her having kids before me. Let me just say for the record, I barely knew her husband. We'd maybe had a handful of conversations over the years, and none of them were deep or personal. The idea that I would interfere in their marriage is ridiculous. But Lisa lied with so much confidence that people started believing her. Some of our relatives even blocked me without saying a word. I found out later from a cousin that Lisa had told them I'd been rubbing it in her face, that I was getting married, and that I'd been bragging about how I'd convinced her husband to leave her. None of it was true, but by the time I heard about it, the damage was done. When my wedding day finally arrived, almost none of my family showed up. It was devastating. My parents, aunts, uncles, and even some of my cousins, all no-shows. The only people from my side of the family who came were a handful of cousins who didn't believe Lisa's lies. The rest of the guests were my friends, my husband's friends, and his family. I'll be honest, the weeks leading up to the wedding were some of the hardest of my life. I considered trying to clear my name, but it felt pointless. Lisa had already poisoned the well, and it would have just been my word against hers. Besides, the people who sided with her had already made up their minds. I wasn't going to waste my energy on people who didn't want to hear the truth. Despite everything, my wedding day was beautiful. My husband and his family went out of their way to make me feel loved and supported. My friends kept me laughing and dancing all night. For a few hours, I almost forgot about the empty seats and the family members who had chosen Lisa over me. But even though I had fun, the pain didn't go away. After the wedding, I cut off contact with Lisa and my parents. I couldn't forgive them for what they'd done. Lisa didn't just skip my wedding. She actively tried to ruin it. And my parents, instead of supporting me, enabled her behavior. It's been 3 years, and I haven't spoken to any of them since. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted by going no contact, but then I remember how much pain they caused me during what should have been one of the happiest times of my life. Lisa's jealousy and my parents' favoritism turned my wedding into a nightmare. I've moved on in a lot of ways, but the resentment is still there. Fast forward 3 years, and I've built a life that I'm proud of. My husband and I are in a great place, and we recently announced some exciting news. I'm pregnant with our first child. It should have been a time of pure happiness. But of course, Lisa and my parents had to find a way to insert themselves back into my life. Here's what happened. A few weeks ago, my husband and I decided to share our pregnancy news on social media. We kept the announcement simple, just a picture of us holding a sonogram with a caption about how excited we are. We hadn't spoken to Lisa or my parents in years, so I didn't think they'd even notice. But apparently, they're still lurking on my social media because within hours, my mom called me out of the blue. When I saw her name on my phone, I froze. For 3 years, she hadn't bothered to reach out, not even for holidays or birthdays. Now, all of a sudden, she wanted to talk? I hesitated, but eventually answered. The conversation started off fake friendly. She congratulated me on the pregnancy and said it was such wonderful news. Then she got to the real reason she was calling. Lisa. Turns out, Lisa has been trying to have a baby ever since her divorce, but hasn't had any luck. My mom told me Lisa had gone through multiple rounds of IVF, all of which failed, and she's now been diagnosed as infertile. To be honest, I felt a little bad for her when I heard that. Infertility isn't something I'd wish on anyone, but then my mom dropped the bombshell. She and my dad thought this pregnancy was the perfect opportunity for me to make things right with Lisa. I was confused at first. What did my pregnancy have to do with Lisa? My mom explained that since Lisa can't have children of her own, it would be healing for her to bond with my baby. She suggested that I let Lisa play an active role in my child's life, as if my baby could somehow fill the void left by her infertility. She even said, "It would be good for your baby to have 2 mothers." I was speechless. This woman hadn't spoken to me in 3 years, and now she wanted me to share my unborn child with the sister who had sabotaged my wedding? I told her no immediately. I said Lisa and I weren't on speaking terms, and there was no way I was letting her anywhere near my baby. My mom tried to guilt-trip me, saying Lisa was devastated by her infertility and needed the support of her family now more than ever. She even implied I was being cruel by denying her the chance to bond with her future niece or nephew. I shut her down hard. I told her I wasn't responsible for fixing Lisa's life or making her feel better about her choices. I also pointed out that if they really cared about me or my baby, they wouldn't have waited until I was pregnant to reach out. My mom didn't take that well. She accused me of being harsh and said I was letting old grudges ruin my chance to rebuild our family. I ended the call before I said something I'd regret. Ich habe ditro. Over the next few days, my dad and Lisa both tried to contact me. My dad's approach was similar to my mom's. He framed it as a chance for us to heal as a family and insisted Lisa's intentions were pure. According to him, Lisa wasn't trying to take over or replace me as a mother. She just wanted to be involved because the baby would be linked to her by blood. He even said it would be good for me to have Lisa's help once the baby arrived. I told him the same thing I told my mom. No, I didn't need Lisa's help, and I certainly didn't want her around my child. My husband and I already have a solid support system with his family and our friends. If Lisa and my parents had been content to ignore me for 3 years, they could continue doing so now. Lisa's messages, on the other hand, were a whole different story. She didn't bother with fake niceness. She accused me of being selfish and said I owed her this chance to be part of my baby's life. She even called me heartless for refusing to include her. I ignored her texts at first, but when she started spamming me, I finally blocked her. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but my parents weren't ready to give up. They called me again a few days later, this time together, and tried to push the idea one last time. My mom actually said the words, "Lisa's been through so much, and this baby could be the family's way of making things right." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My unborn child wasn't even here yet, and they were already treating it like some kind of peace offering for Lisa. That's when I lost it. I told them I saw through their fake concern and that I wasn't going to let them guilt me into this ridiculous plan. I also made it clear that if they kept pushing, I would block them permanently, just like I did with Lisa. They tried to argue, but I hung up before they could get another word in. Since then, I've been dealing with a mix of emotions. On one hand, I feel justified in standing my ground. My parents and Lisa showed me exactly where their priorities were when they skipped my wedding and spread lies about me. They don't deserve a place in my child's life. But on the other hand, I can't help but feel angry and sad that they would even try to manipulate me like this. It's like they've learned nothing from the past 3 years. Yes, for now, I'm focusing on my pregnancy and trying to stay positive. My husband has been amazing through all of this, and his family has been so supportive. They've reassured me that I don't owe Lisa or my parents anything, and honestly, they're right. This baby is a new chapter for me and my husband, and I'm not going to let toxic people ruin that. While I've spent the past few years trying to move on, the whole situation with Lisa has always felt unresolved. I knew she lied to the family to sabotage my wedding, but I never got the full story of what was going on in her life back then. That changed about a year after my wedding, when my husband and I ran into Lisa's ex-husband, let's call him Mark, by complete coincidence. What he told us blew my mind and gave me so much clarity about Lisa's behavior. It all started one afternoon when my husband and I went out for lunch at this little restaurant we'd been meaning to try. We were halfway through our meal when I spotted Mark sitting a few tables away with a group of coworkers. At first, I wasn't sure if he'd recognize us, but he ended up walking over to say hello. The conversation started casually. He congratulated us on our wedding and apologized for not attending. I told him I understood, considering the timing of his divorce from Lisa. That's when things took an unexpected turn. My husband made an offhand comment about how it was ironic that Mark hadn't come to the wedding, considering Lisa didn't even show up herself. Mark looked genuinely confused and asked, "What do you mean she didn't go? She told me she was busy helping you plan everything." I nearly choked on my drink. Lisa had been using my wedding as an excuse to delay their divorce proceedings. According to Mark, she repeatedly pushed back their mediation sessions, claiming she was too busy with wedding prep. Meanwhile, she was actively spreading lies about me to the rest of the family. Mark admitted he thought it was strange that Lisa seemed so invested in my wedding, especially since she and I had never been close, but he assumed she was just trying to keep up appearances during the divorce. That's when my husband and I told Mark the truth. Lisa hadn't been helping with my wedding at all. In fact, she'd gone out of her way to sabotage it. We explained how she spread rumors that I had somehow convinced him to leave her and that I'd been bragging about it to the family. Mark was stunned. He said he had no idea she was lying about me, and he apologized for not reaching out to clarify things sooner. Then Mark dropped the real bombshell, the actual reason for their divorce. For years, Lisa had told everyone that their marriage ended because they couldn't agree on having kids. She wanted to be a mom, and Mark was adamantly child-free. That's the story she stuck to, and it was the one most people believed. But according to Mark, there was a much darker reason behind their split. Mark admitted that, after months of fighting about kids, he had started to reconsider his stance. He genuinely loved Lisa and was willing to explore the idea of becoming a father if it would save their marriage. One day, he decided to sit her down and tell her he was ready to start talking about having children. He expected her to be thrilled, but instead, she said something that completely changed how he saw her. Lisa confessed that she had already stopped taking her birth control months earlier, without telling him. She admitted she'd been hoping to get pregnant accidentally so that he would have no choice but to go along with it. She even laughed about it, like it was some kind of clever plan. Mark was horrified. He said he felt completely betrayed, not just because she lied to him, but because she took away his ability to make an informed choice about such a major life decision. That was the final straw for him. He realized he couldn't trust her anymore, and he filed for divorce shortly after. Hearing this left me absolutely floored. I'd always known Lisa was manipulative, but this was a whole new level. I couldn't believe she'd tried to baby trap her own husband, and I couldn't believe she'd lied to everyone about the reason for their divorce. Suddenly, her behavior during my wedding made so much more sense. She was lashing out at me because she couldn't face the consequences of her own actions. Mark told us that after he filed for divorce, Lisa became increasingly erratic. She'd alternate between begging him to come back and blaming him for ruining her life. At one point, she even tried to convince their mutual friends that Mark was the one who lied about wanting kids, even though he'd been upfront about his feelings from the start. Most of their friends saw through her lies, but it didn't stop her from trying. After our conversation with Mark, I felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was relieved to finally understand what had been going on behind the scenes. It explained so much about Lisa's actions and gave me validation that I wasn't crazy for cutting her off. But on the other hand, it made me even angrier. Lisa's lies didn't just ruin her marriage. They also destroyed my relationship with most of our family. And for what? To deflect blame from herself? I thought about confronting Lisa, or even sharing what I'd learned with the rest of the family. But in the end, I decided it wasn't worth it. At that point, I was already no contact with Lisa and my parents, and I didn't want to re-engage with the drama. I figured the truth would come out eventually, and honestly, I didn't feel like it was my responsibility to expose her. Looking back, that conversation with Mark was a turning point for me. It helped me let go of some of the guilt I'd been carrying about the way things ended with my family. For a long time, I wondered if I should have done more to defend myself, or if I'd overreacted by cutting them off. But after learning the full extent of Lisa's lies, I realized I did what I had to do to protect myself. Lisa's actions weren't just a mistake or a moment of poor judgment. They were calculated, deliberate choices to hurt the people around her for her own benefit. I've spent too much of my life being collateral damage in Lisa's schemes, and I refuse to let her drag me down anymore. Then came the final straw, started a couple of weeks after I blocked Lisa and my parents following their two mothers proposal for my baby. I figured that would be the end of it. They couldn't contact me directly anymore, so what else could they do? Turns out, a lot. Lisa decided to take her grievances public. The first post was vague, but obviously aimed at me. She wrote something like, "It's sad when family lets you down, especially when you've always tried to support them. Some people just don't understand loyalty or forgiveness." I didn't respond, but it annoyed me because I knew she was painting herself as the victim again. The comments were filled with people saying things like, "You're so strong," and "Whoever hurt you doesn't deserve you." Classic sympathy fishing. At first I thought, whatever, let her vent. I'm not engaging. But then the posts started getting more specific. Lisa began dropping not-so-subtle hints about my pregnancy, saying things like, "It's hard to be happy for someone who's always tried to ruin your life." In another post, she wrote, "Some people are so selfish that they won't even consider sharing their blessings with others who need them more." It was obvious she was trying to frame me as the bad guy for not letting her be part of my baby's life. Extras. The final straw came when my mom started chiming in. She made her own post about how some people in this family have always been jealous and manipulative, and how they turned their backs on us when we needed them most. She even wrote, "It's heartbreaking to see your own child reject her sister's pain." I don't think she realized how ironic it was to accuse me of rejecting Lisa's pain after she and Lisa had ignored mine for years. These posts weren't just annoying, they were damaging. Extended family members who hadn't spoken to me in years started calling to check in and ask what was going on. Some of them were outright accusatory, saying things like, "Why can't you just make peace with Lisa?" And "Family is everything. You need to let this go." It felt like they'd all decided I was the villain without even asking for my side of the story. After a few weeks of this nonsense, I decided I wasn't going to sit back and let Lisa control the narrative anymore. I hadn't said a word about her lies in years because I wanted to keep the peace, but clearly that strategy wasn't working. If Lisa wanted to air our dirty laundry on social media, then fine. I'd do the same. I reached out to Lisa's ex-husband, Mark, to let him know what was going on. We'd spoken a few times since our run-in at the restaurant, and we were on good terms. I asked if he'd be okay with me sharing the truth about their divorce, and he said yes. He even offered to back me up if anyone doubted my story. So I wrote a long post explaining everything. I detailed how Lisa had sabotaged my wedding by spreading lies about me, how my parents enabled her behavior, and how they'd tried to guilt me into sharing my baby with her. Then I dropped the bombshell about her divorce. The fact that she'd secretly stopped taking birth control to try and baby-trap Mark, and that her manipulative behavior was the real reason their marriage ended. The reaction was explosive. Within hours, my phone was blowing up with messages from family members. Some were supportive, saying they'd had no idea Lisa was capable of such things. Others were furious, accusing me of airing private family matters and kicking Lisa while she's down. Lisa and my parents were uncharacteristically silent at first, which told me they didn't know how to spin this. But of course, they didn't stay quiet for long. A few days later, Lisa made a post claiming I'd fabricated the entire story out of jealousy. She said I'd always been bitter about how close she was to our parents, and accused me of trying to turn the family against her. My mom and dad backed her up with comments about how they just wanted to rebuild the family, and how they never expected such cruelty from me. At this point, I wasn't even angry. I was exhausted. I'd laid out the truth, and anyone who still chose to believe Lisa was free to do so. I wasn't going to waste my energy arguing with people who had already made up their minds. I left the post up for about a week and then took it down. Not because I regretted what I said, but because I didn't want my social media filled with negativity. Since then, things have calmed down a bit. Most of the family who sided with Lisa has gone quiet, and a few have even reached out to apologize for believing her lies in the past. Lisa and my parents, on the other hand, are still playing the victim. They've made a few more posts about how families should stick together no matter what, and how they just want peace. But I haven't responded. The way I see it, I've done everything I can to defend myself. If people still want to believe Lisa's version of events, That's their problem, not mine. I've got a baby on the way, and I'm not going to let toxic people take up any more space in my life. That's where things stand for now. If you've ever had to deal with a family member airing your drama on social media, I'd love to hear how you handled it. Thanks for reading. Hey everyone. The channel's been slowing down a bit, and I spend so much time finding these stories for you. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button. It means the world and helps keep this journey going strong. Let's grow together. Now let's move to the final update. Final update. Hey Reddit! I wasn't planning on posting again, but the universe and my family had other plans. I thought I had closed this chapter, but apparently Lisa, 30F, and my parents weren't ready to let go. If you've been following my posts, you already know the backstory. If not, here's the short version. My sister Lisa ruined my wedding. My parents enabled her, and then they all tried to guilt me into letting Lisa play second mother to my unborn baby. I've been no contact with them for a while now, but recently they've taken their entitlement to a whole new level. This update might be the wildest yet, so buckle up. XT Ducks. A few weeks ago, I started noticing weird activity on my social media. My pregnancy posts, simple updates like baby bump photos or nursery prep, were getting strange comments. At first, it was just vague stuff like, "It's sad when people forget the meaning of family," or "Some babies are blessings for more than one person." I thought it was just random trolls, but then I realized the accounts were suspiciously new, with no profile pictures or personal posts. My gut told me it was Lisa, or my parents behind them. I brushed it off because, honestly, I'm used to their antics at this point. But then, it escalated. One account left a comment saying, "You should be careful. Some people don't deserve to raise children." That one shook me. I deleted the comment and blocked the account, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching me. Things took a darker turn when I got a call from my landlord. Apparently, someone had called pretending to be me, asking if I was planning to move out soon. They claimed they were my sister and wanted to help with the process. Thankfully, my landlord didn't believe them and called me to confirm. I was furious. This was a blatant invasion of my privacy, and I had no doubt Lisa was behind it. I contacted my parents to confront them, against my better judgment, and they didn't even bother denying it. My mom said something like, "Lisa was just trying to help because she knows you'll need more space with the baby coming." I lost it. I told them it wasn't Lisa's place to meddle in my housing situation and that she had no right to contact my landlord. My dad tried to calm me down by saying, "She's just excited about the baby. Can't you let her be part of this?" That's when I hung up. I wasn't going to waste my breath arguing with people who clearly didn't see how insane this was. The final straw came last week when I discovered that Lisa and my parents had been contacting my husband's family behind my back. My mother-in-law called me, completely confused, because Lisa had sent her a long message on Facebook. In the message, Lisa painted herself as a victim, claiming I had cut her out of my life for no reason, and that she was heartbroken about being excluded from her niece or nephew's life. She even suggested that my in-laws should mediate between us because this baby deserves to have a complete family. My mother-in-law, bless her, shut that down immediately. She told Lisa that we were happy with the family we had and didn't need anyone meddling. But what really upset me was that Lisa had even reached out in the first place. It felt like a boundary violation on a whole new level. She wasn't just bothering me, she was dragging my husband's family into her mess. After that, I decided enough was enough. I filed a police report about the landlord incident and the harassing comments on social media. I also sent Lisa and my parents a cease and desist letter through a lawyer, making it clear that if they continued to harass me or my family, I wouldn't hesitate to take legal action. Of course, they didn't take it well. My mom called me sobbing, saying, "How could you do this to your own family?" Lisa sent me a long email accusing me of being cruel and vindictive. She even said, "You're depriving me of the chance to experience motherhood through your child." That sentence made my skin crawl. I don't know how she doesn't see how unhinged she sounds. My dad tried to guilt me, saying, "This is tearing the family apart. You've made your point, but can't we just move on?" I told him I wasn't the one tearing the family apart. They were. I've given them so many chances to respect my boundaries, and they've trampled over every single one. At this point, I don't even feel sad about cutting them off anymore. I feel relieved. Now, I've gone completely no contact. I've changed my phone number, made all my social media private, and let my landlord and employer know about the situation in case they try anything else. My husband and I are also looking into installing security cameras around our home. I hate that it's come to this, but I'm not taking any chances when it comes to my baby's safety. Despite everything, I'm feeling a strange sense of peace. For the first time in years, I've taken back control of my life. My husband and I are focusing on the future and preparing for the arrival of our little one. His family has been amazing through all of this, and I'm so grateful to have their support. This baby is going to be surrounded by so much love, and that's all that matters. Thank you to everyone who's followed my story and offered advice. Your comments have been a lifeline during some of the toughest moments, and I can't thank you enough. This is, hopefully, my final update because I'm ready to close this chapter for good. Wish me luck, Reddit, and I'll wish the same for all of you dealing with similar situations.